Members, welcome to the Health and Community Committee. You're hereby summoned to attend the meeting of the Health and Community Committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber Guildhall on Thursday, 19th of January 2023 at 4 p.m. So just take the attendance. Alderman Devaney.
Here, Karen.
Alderman Guy.
Here, Karen.
Alderman Kerrigan. Councillor Michaela Boyd.
Here, Karen. Here, Karen. Online.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Kerrigan.
Apologies for Michaela.
Councillor Doyle.
Here.
Councillor Duffy.
Shot.
Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Ferguson.
Here, Karen.
Councillor Harkin.
Here.
Councillor Jackson. Councillor McGinley.
And Shaw online, Karen.
Councillor Sonoya Bauer.
Apologies, and I'm here.
And Councillor Taney, thank you.
Thank you. Members, item 3 is a broadcasting statement. I'm going to read it out here. I'd like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the Guildhall or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to use and storage of those images for broadcasting and training purposes and for the purposes of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and previous speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council's privacy notice may be found on the Council website at derryandstrabane.com. Okay, members, item 4 is the declaration of members' interests. You can declare those now or declare them as the items arise. Okay, members, I haven't seen anyone indicating yet. Members, I'm going to move on to item 5, which is a deputation. And we have Leo, Liz and Julie from the Department of Communities. And this is regarding the calls for reduction of debt repayments, a motion that was passed in Council previously. So Leo, Liz and Julie, you're very welcome to Council. We'll try and get your presentation up on screen here. Yep, that's it up. If you just want to go ahead and give your presentation, and we'll give members an opportunity afterwards to ask some questions. And we need to move a slide on. Sean is here in the chamber. You can ask him to move on to the next slide. Okay, if you just want to go ahead.
Thank you. First, can I just say good afternoon, Mr. Chairperson and members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee today. I'm Leo McLaughlin, and I'm the Director responsible for debt management within the Department for Communities. And I'd like to introduce Julie Nelson, who's my Assistant Director with responsibility for debt management, and Liz McKenna, who is our Debt Operations Senior Manager. So I suppose just to be clear, the purpose of attendance today is to update the committee on the position with regard to social security debt recovery, following on from correspondence from the committee to the department earlier on in the year, and this is particularly within the context of the current cost of living crisis. I suppose before I get into the sort of the detail of the presentation, which is very brief, I'd just like to take this opportunity to reiterate that the department is very alive to the sort of the circumstances that our customers are experiencing, sort of on benefit generally, but certainly within the current context where there's huge inflation and sort of energy price hike rises. So we acknowledge the financial hardship that's been experienced by many of individuals, and I think across the department in all of our business areas, but particularly in debt management, I think we're very keen to do what we can to kind of soften that blow to whatever extent we can. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this afternoon, and this, as I said, is a very brief presentation, I intend to talk through the department's response to widespread calls from a broad spectrum of stakeholders to suspend social security debt recovery. The assistance that the department has in place to assist customers, and these are existing services who are experiencing financial difficulty. The action we have been taken to try and get the message of the support that's available out to those customers who need it. And then finally, there's a slide which just gives sort of relevant contact points in debt management for customers, or if you have a concern about a particular customer that you can escalate. Okay, and I'm happy to take questions as I go, or if you prefer then to take them at the end. Okay, next slide, please. So I think you probably were conscious that during the pandemic there was a temporary suspension of debt recovery, and that led to, I think, a similar call from the department, again from a wide spectrum of stakeholders, to suspend debt recovery, sort of acknowledging that people have more pressure on their available income and their benefit at the minute because of cost of living. I suppose the thing that maybe, and I think there was a misconception to an extent from stakeholders that was a simple thing and cost neutral. And I suppose perhaps what people weren't aware is that we were able to suspend debt recovery in Northern Ireland because this was a national change, and that because the Department for Communities uses the same systems as our colleagues in DWP, then we were reliant on their assistance to do that. And that was done through a huge program of system changes and the application of robotics and sort of automated processes behind the scenes. So I suppose that brings me then to and earlier correspondence, or my response to the committee, indicated that there were some significant obstacles around a unilateral suspension of debt in Northern Ireland. We know that DWP haven't considered an additional suspension because of cost of living. They have chosen to try and assist customers in other ways, and that's not least because the aftermath of the earlier pandemic suspension really took considerable operational resources and effort to reinstate recovery plans. So there's two obstacles, I suppose, two key areas. That being the system. There was no system for Northern Ireland to do this on their own, and then equally significantly, because we would be breaking parity with DWP, this would require approval both from Treasury, because we would be operating a more lenient system of debt recovery in Northern Ireland when compared with that in DWP, and also because potentially there would be additional costs. It would require executive approval. So I think that was intimated in my response, but that was confirmed, I suppose, through liaison with the Department for Finance, and they in turn through their advice from Treasury. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, I've introduced a slide on third-party deductions because this was particularly included in your earlier correspondence, and I suppose I'm reiterating to an extent the information that was in the correspondence, but I think wanted to draw out, I suppose, a few points that you might want to note. I suppose in essence, this is a support of last resort. So the department would only implement these deductions if the customer is consenting, and really it's a safeguarding facility to protect customers who are at risk of eviction through rent arrears, and similarly disconnection because of arrears with utility bills. So it's a small number of customers who avail of this service. It's a small number of providers that actually use it as well. It is actually a scheme that operates in Northern Ireland with much more discretion with our colleagues in DWP. And so the department has been very cautious about this, and, for example, has not allowed utility providers to increase deductions in respect of this scheme, with rising costs due to cost of living and energy costs. But on the flip side of that is that we have reduced deductions where the customer has needed to do that. Okay, next slide. So I suppose before I start into the detail of this, there is a reasonable expectation of the department that they will recover social security debt. It's public funding, and that's kind of set out in guidance in the managing public money. And that is where it's reasonable to do that, and it doesn't impact on hardship upon customers. But in essence, the recovery legislation gives the department a power rather than a statutory duty to recover. So there is an element of discretion there. So the department has a number of existing ways of supporting customers who are repaying social security debt and experiencing financial difficulty. And I suppose that in the absence of a suspension of debt, that what we are kind of concentrating on now is maximising those levers to best effect to assist all of those customers who require assistance. And we're incredibly flexible around this, you know, and there is a facility to reduce repayments down, you know, to as little as £1 a week. And I know I'm not so naive as to think that that doesn't make a difference. £1 a week doesn't make a difference when your benefit is your sole income. There are some constraints around that, particularly for customers on social fund, where legislatively they're bound to repay their debt within a certain time scale. So instead of a blanket approach, I think the department wants to use a tailored approach based on individual circumstances to reduce down payments where customers are experiencing hardship. And that is an individual conversation with the customer. We have trained staff who are ready to deliver this service and who are available to take calls. And you know, that can be referred on from stakeholders, or it can be from MLAs, from councillors, where a customer is, you know, kind of reluctant or not able to advocate with the department. It also gives us the opportunity to signpost where a customer makes representation to the department. It also gives us the opportunity to signpost the customer to independent community voluntary and community advice organisations, where they can seek further advice where perhaps their debt problem is wider than just social security debt. Okay. And I suppose maybe just to clarify at this point, as I said, these are existing services, so these have been ongoing. Perhaps just for your own information, obviously you will be aware of universal credit advances. The discretion to defer or to use or utilise flexibility in relation to the recovery of advance payments sits with universal credit. So my debt management team will deal with overpayments. They deal with a range of other things, but they don't deal with recovery for advances while the customer is on universal credit. Next slide, please. So, as I've said, sort of a key preoccupation for us at the minute is making sure that those who need support can access it. And we have developed a communications plan and a programme of activities to raise awareness of the support available. We have, and that's kind of across a number of communications media. So we have improved messaging on our overpayment notifications, and we have worked very closely with the Law Centre in Northern Ireland to kind of make sure that all of our notifications that go out about an overpayment, for example, are clearly signposting to the support that's available through the department, and also to the support available from independent advice organisations. We have regular social media notifications to customers on the web pages for the department. Again, sort of signposting them to kind of the contact points to make representation for the department if they're experiencing financial difficulty. And I suppose key to the communications activity ongoing within my team, and actually a really good opportunity speaking to you today, is sort of engaging with stakeholders around this. I think the department is really keen to kind of harness the reach into local communities, you know, outside of the department. And so we have we've worked closely with Advice NI, with the Law Centre, and we have done presentations to the Disability Consultative Forum that operates within the department, to the Trusted Partner Forum that has a cross-section of voluntary and community organisations across Northern Ireland, and that work will be ongoing. Okay. we're also obviously engaging with our staff to make sure, not just within debt management, they are as empathetic as possible. And kind of there is no target on recovery for us. If a customer makes representation about financial hardship, then we will work with them to reduce those repayments. And it's in our interest to get a level that is sustainable for that customer. Okay. And I suppose for all of that, we are continuing to track kind of activity in relation to customers coming in. And what I would say is that in our sort of, it's qualitative information, but in the customer exit surveys that we do, we are getting good feedback that customers are finding these services helpful. Okay. So next slide. So as I said, and maybe should have said earlier in the engagement with you this afternoon, I think I did say initially that there was a sort of a misconception that debt management is sort of a kind of cohesive, homogenous activity. In fact, there's a number of systems involved. There's a number of benefits and services involved. And I think our contact details for escalations for customers who are concerned about their repayments would sort of indicate that. There's no one number that kind of customers can reach. It depends on the nature of their repayment. But suffice to say that in addition to those numbers, my senior team and myself, I'm very happy if you have cases that you wish to escalate, and very happy that you would share details, you know, with if you're liaising with organisations or individuals in your local community. Okay, so I'll ask at this point, that was a very quick run through. I'll look at Julie and Liz here and see if there's anything additional that they want to add that I haven't covered.
Just one thing. Can you hear me okay, Leo? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, just one additional thing, that we also have extended the period by which we offer reduced repayment rates from 6 months to 18 months to give the customers the opportunity for a longer respite then for the lower repayment period. So I thought that you might be interested to know that.
And I suppose just in summary, we are tracking developments in DWP as well. Sort of the key impediment for us. And I think if we were being honest, I think we like this approach because we did have complaints from customers and during the suspension the last time round, whose preference it was to repay. And those can typically be social fund customers, customers in discretionary support. And by paying down their debt balance, it allows them to access sort of subsequent or future loans. So this tailored approach, I think, gives an element of choice for customers, and we are only too keen to sort of settle on a repayment that is sustainable. Okay, happy to take any questions.
Okay, Leo, thank you for that. First speaker is Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Leo, for the presentation, and thanks to your staff for coming here today. Two questions really, and it's in relation to the way that the department says it supports people who are experiencing financial difficulties, primarily around reducing repayment rate and or term. I recently had a case and we've discussed it here at Council recently around the support for mortgage interest, and effectively what the customer wanted to do was to change the amount that was paid either to their bank or from their bank with regards to the scheme. And I actually got a letter back from the department that said that they were unable to do that. There was no explanation or anything other than they were unable to do that. So I'd be interested just in terms of that particular scheme, where the actual support in terms of repayment rates or terms lies. And just in terms of the second point on that slide, waiving debt in exceptional circumstances. Obviously, I have a fair list in my mind that I can think of cases I've dealt with that I would deem to be in exceptional circumstances. What is your definition of what is an exceptional circumstance or an exceptional case? Is there a policy around that? Because naturally, you can imagine in the work that I do and that my colleagues do in the community, we experience and see a lot of cases where people don't necessarily fit in a particular box. They've got circumstances that are sometimes larger out of their control, whether that be financial or otherwise. So I'm keen to hear what the department's definition or policy is around what defines an exceptional case. Thank you.
Liz, I'm going to maybe ask you to come in on SMI. That
Yeah.
It's a particular scheme, and I suppose when I was thinking about deductions in relation to social security debt, I was thinking about overpayments or advances. So I think that probably is one scheme where we have less flexibility. So if you don't mind, I'm going to answer your second question first in relation to waiving debt. And again, Julie and Liz will come in to sort of supplement my answer. I suppose in essence, this is discretion. So there are no set of criteria as such. There's no sort of definitive range of circumstances that would mean that your social security debt would be waived. Quite often, and Liz will come in here, it involves kind of a sort of a health impact of the debt. But and I think we do generally ask for medical evidence where that is the case. But where that is the case, then we will look favourably where we can on waiving debt. I mean, you would expect it to be in exceptional cases because we will use flexibility to kind of establish repayments at a low level to suit the customer. But certainly, no definitive list, but certainly health conditions or a health impact of the overpayment or recovery action on a person or their family, I think is pretty key. And I suppose just what I would say also is, and I'm quite genuine in this, if you're concerned about a response from the department within the realms of decision making, I'm a relatively new director and not that desperately familiar with SMI, but I think I dislike intensely the idea that somebody would get an adverse response from the department without an explanation for why that is. So very happy if you want to provide details, and I can follow that up. Liz, can you come in on SMI then? Liz, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, apologies. I must have muted myself by mistake. Councillor Doyle, if I could just explain that for support for mortgage interest, we in debt management come in at the back end of the process. So I'm assuming that when you were, so there's two aspects of it. The front, the benefit processing offices will be dealing with what you were talking about there about the repayment terms. And I'm assuming that's where the response came to. And like Leo, I'd be very keen to see that and see what we can do and look at in that individual case and liaise with the benefit processing offices. We do deal with support for mortgage interest, but it's really for the sale, where there's going to be a sale of the property, where a customer has died, or a transfer of a property. So we're dealing with that aspect of it. I do think that your response was from another part of the department, but we would be keen to follow that up for you.
Thank you. Councillor, are you happy? Yep. The next speaker is Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all our guests here today for taking the time to do this presentation. And People Before Profit brought this proposal for the Council to back debt suspension on behalf of and to amplify the demands of the Cost of Living Crisis campaign, the Crushed by the Cost of Living campaign, and the Joseph Rowntree campaign. And people thought that this was an avenue that could be pursued because Social Security, as you will know, is devolved. So from the outset, I mean, it's our opinion and the opinion of many others that there just hasn't been enough done to help people facing hardship. I'm sure you will all agree. When Stormont was up and running, it turned down the opportunity to declare a hardship emergency, which would have helped to direct the various departments, but that wasn't taken up. It was turned down, and then that made it much harder for departments to get guidance when the DUP started their boycott. We, as you probably know, have declared a hardship emergency here in our district area, and I know that suspending debt recovery for people on benefits and facing tremendous hardship over the last year and a half would have been a difficult thing for the department to do. But we as a council, took the initiative of setting up an emergency hardship fund, and that was extremely difficult for the council to do. And we didn't do it because we thought, this would be, a great endeavour. It was because of the failure of Westminster and Stormont to actually properly help people. And I think that's where the frustration comes in about the slowness around measures that could have protected a lot more people, and indeed the issue of the debt recovery. So the thing about exceptional cases, I mean, this has been widely challenged because, look, when we opened up our council hardship fund, we had 5,500 people apply for it within the first 6 hours of the scheme, and it had to be shut down on the first day. And we were only going to be able to help 2,405 people. So hardship isn't exceptional right now. Hardship is widespread right across our district for residents here, especially for people who are in receipt of benefits, and people on universal credit and so on. So that description of like there are certain individuals facing hardship, it doesn't actually fit what has happened right across the north. Indeed, that's why the Belfast City Council has now followed the Derrynshire Band Council and opened up their own hardship fund. And look, we know the £600 is coming now eventually, but none of these things make up for the fact that there was a year and a half of inaction from Westminster and Stormont. So I accept that there's been multiple things that the department has done to try and ease the burden, but overall, I think it falls way short, and that's why what this council has agreed to over and over again is that there was criminal negligence on the part of Westminster and Stormont when it came to taking urgent action to protect people. But thank you for being here today.
Thank you. And next on the guest speaker is Councillor Jackson.
Good Chair, and on behalf of Sinn Féin, I want to thank Leo and Liz and Julie for coming to the committee today and for all the work that you do and have been doing to support people. I know that that there is a cost of living emergency. There's a crisis. It's been well rehearsed around the challenges that individual families are facing, businesses are facing, even ourselves as a council are facing. But there's nowhere where those challenges are more profound and more stark or as in those households that are reliant on benefits. And we appreciate the update and appreciate the offer to follow up on any specific cases. And we appreciate the degree of flexibility that currently exists within the system to support people. I think one of the most important slides that was put up was that making sure that all those that need support can access it, because there are limited support. There is limited support out there, but if anybody is finding themselves in a situation where they're getting into debt and it's out of control, one of the most important steps is to reach out and seek support, and they explore the different avenues that are available to them. So I appreciate the fact that there was a degree of an emphasis on that in terms of your presentation, but I know I know that you're coming in here in the back of a council motion, and I know that it's a good opportunity for yourselves to highlight the challenges that you are operating within. I didn't expect you to be coming with any new solutions, because there is a political vacuum, and that's the reality that we're in. I know prior to October, there was a suite of measures that the then Minister Deirdre Hargey had put forward, put together, but as usual, and one of those was a freeze to any deductions, debt reductions to benefits. But as you have pointed out, that required an executive to be put in place, and the issues and our frustrations around the lack of an executive is well rehearsed. But so that fault can't be placed on the department, and it can't be placed on those that are working on behalf of the department. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, and I suppose just and there's a question there, and I suppose there's a pretty obvious answer, but in relation to the levels of support that you have identified in terms of reducing the payments, and there's just those different the different support mechanisms that are there for the department to use. Can you quantify the rise that and how many of the rise of the implementation of that type of support through benefits claimants, particularly over the last 6 months? Because we all in our daily work come across and support people, but it's I suppose from a department perspective, it would be good to have an overall view around the level of flexibility and the level of support that the department is providing those that have found themselves in debt as a result of simply existing and meeting the rising costs that we're all experiencing. So, aside from the question, I just want to take this opportunity on behalf of the party to thank you for coming before council today. Very good.
I suppose if I can maybe answer sort of those recent questions and maybe come back on a couple of previous points. In relation to quantifying, I think, as I said, we have this programme of communication activity, and I suppose it's relatively early days for us. These are existing services, so we've always operated this level of flexibility. But I think the question for us now is that, are we getting to everybody who are, and probably higher numbers of people because of cost of living experience and maybe a bit of financial difficulty. So at the minute, I suppose, I don't think we can give you any indication or percentage, but this is something that we will be monitoring really closely. And I think just to give you reassurance as well, that the communications activities will be ongoing, and the engagement with stakeholders will be ongoing. I think, you know, when we work with customer representative groups or councillors or MLAs, quite often they will say that customers are not maybe able to advocate on their behalf. So I think I can't emphasise enough the role that stakeholders and engagement with stakeholders has for us. But suffice to say, we will be looking at this very closely. We'll be also looking at metrics, you know, how many people access kind of the sort of the refreshed messaging on NI Direct or the sort of equivalent you know, kind of business websites, you know, because conscious just that we are making deductions potentially from salary for people who are not on benefit. So it is something that we are very alive to and will be watching very closely. Now, I would say, just to manage expectations, that I've already mentioned that this debt recovery is complex. It's across a number of benefits. It's across a number of systems. And so, and Liz, I think, will testify to this, sometimes our management information in relation to sort of operational outcomes is not necessarily the best. Some of these systems are sort of older and just not as flexible as some of the modern systems. But we will be watching this very closely. With the committee's indulgence, just I wanted to come back on a couple of other points just made previously, just to clarify. I think discretion we will exercise in all cases where there is no legislative constraint upon us. So I know for social fund, sometimes loans have to be recovered within a certain, I think it's 7 to 8 weeks maximum. So where there's nothing like that in terms of constraint, we will reduce repayments. We'll do that on demand by a customer. When I was talking about exceptional circumstances, that's to completely waive a debt. So that's to expunge the debt, just to clarify. And I can totally understand the frustration from stakeholders because Social Security is a devolved matter. But the reality of it is we use DWP systems, and so we are very heavily constrained to doing something outside of, kind of what's been done on the mainland. And also, I think there is an issue for the executive, when there is an executive sitting, that any sort of more lenient system of social security or debt recovery, for example, in Northern Ireland, compared with what happens in DWP, introduces the risk of penalties to the Northern Ireland bloc. Because as often said, you can absolutely make those changes, but you will have to pay for them. So that's just to clarify. And I suppose one final thing, actually, and you're obviously well aware that the national government is administering cost of living payments on Northern Ireland's behalf, I suppose, to our citizens. But the department has used flexibility where it has had it. And I would point you to sort of recent schemes, the EPSS, the Energy Payment Support Scheme, which the department did, which was different to what was been done by DWP.
Thank you, Leo. Next speaker, Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And on behalf of the DUP, can I just say welcome to Leo, Julie and Liz for the presentation and update. And as we all know, we are in very much a financial crisis at the moment. And look, yes, we can't get out of the fact that, look, just before COVID, there were always financial pressures. But I think the pandemic has exacerbated that situation. And many of us who, and I would have sat there up until about a week ago on one of our advice centres here, providers for the council area here, and look, well briefed on the difficulties that those advice services are having and around debt. But look, at the end of the day, I want to just say thank you for the work that you do, helping those people who have difficulty and around debt. And it's not an easy fix sometimes, so it isn't. It is difficult, burdensome. But look, just want to say thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for coming with the presentation today.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Next speaker, Councillor Farr.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Leo, Julie and Liz from the SDLP for coming here today, giving up your time and giving us this presentation on the work you do on a daily basis. And, in my experience dealing with debt management, it's been overwhelmingly positive. I think your department is really, really responsive to requests. And I don't think there's been a single situation where I phoned debt management on behalf of a constituent and the repayments weren't reduced. So, that's good news. We obviously see the benefit of pausing debt recovery. It'll provide some form of relief and some form of comfort to people on the lowest incomes in society as they try to navigate this cost of living crisis. But we note that one of the main obstacles to pausing debt recovery is that it needs executive approval. And we don't have an executive because the DUP are refusing to go to work. And as per every single issue that we debate in this chamber, the DUP say they support it. You know, they support the pausing of debt recovery, but they don't support it enough to actually go back to work and form a government. So as usual, from the DUP, it's just words, empty words and meaningless waffle. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Councillor Farr. Members, I have no further indicated speakers. So I'd just like to thank Leo, Julie and Liz for giving up their time and for coming into committee and giving us this, give us a good overview of the great work that they are doing. And also for the offer for us to be able to reach out if we've got concerns about individuals. So do thank you for your time and for coming in. And we're going to move on with the meeting. You're more welcome to stay, but you might have better things to be up to. So but I do thank you for your time on behalf of the committee. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, members, I'm going to move on to item 6, which is Chair's business. And first of all, I want to, even though it is the 19th, I do want to wish us a happy new year. And in that regard, I want to welcome Councillor Alex Duffy to the committee. You're very welcome, Alex. And I also want to wish Councillor Paul Fleming well as he steps down from council as well. He was on this committee before, Alex. I want to wish Councillor Fleming well. Members, I have only one item of Chair's business that I want to raise tonight, and I'm going to raise it myself, and that is to do with the consultation that is opened this week on the future of emergency general surgery at the Southwest Acute Hospital. I've been contacted by Andy McCain, who's the regional chair of Unison here, and he wanted to request that I raise this in Chair's business to ensure that council, this committee and the council responds to the consultation that is opened. I do believe that removing these services will have a massively detrimental impact on people's lives, especially as a my own DA of the DARE, given that the SWAS is quite close and a lot of people would go to the SWA before they would go to Alton the Galvin. So I would like to propose, as chair of the committee, the council respond to the consultation and the right to the Western Trust in support of the retention of these vital services and to enhance them as well. First speaker, I want to come in, Councillor Alderman Kerrigan. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Sorry, I was just trying to get off mute. And do echo your sentiments there and regards to the SWA. And again, as you say, it's for the Derg DA, and particularly in Castlereagh, depending on which side you are, it is the local hospital. You know, I know our council is very much focused on Alton Galvin, and Alton Galvin needs its support also. But again, I know even with my own, it has been seconded there. I see. I know I wasn't just as quick as Councillor McGinley in the chat box there. So as I say, I'm happy to support it, Chair. And as I say, my own children were born in the old Enniskillen Hospital prior to the SWA being opened. So as I say, and again, I've been in it with different children of my own at various times. And as I say, it's a great facility, and it's disappointing to see that this potential threat to service has been taken away from it, and I've had to be in myself in the hospital. So as I say, I know the work that it does there, and it would be very disappointing to see that. And I would encourage as well that we have a response from this committee and the council, but that individual members, and we would encourage particularly, and I know I'll be doing it, I'm sure the rest there, or my DARE councillors will be doing it, pushing that we get individual members and groups, that would be minded to go into the SWA to respond to it and raise the concern and just push this issue as far as possible. But no, very supportive and thankful for you to raise the issue as well, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. And that was what I was ringing you earlier about, Alderman Kerrigan. But I do appreciate your comments, and I do agree there that we do need to get as many individuals as possible to respond. Councillor Doyle, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair, and I think this is an important issue for everybody because ultimately the extra pressure that will be put on the health service in the wider northwest will impact Galvin if this consultation goes ahead and we get to a point where emergency services in SWA are badly affected. But I want to note that I read a piece from the BBC the other day with regards to comments made by the Permanent Secretary of the Department of Health, and he said that the crisis in health at the moment, which we all know about and we all see on a regular basis, actually goes back 6 years because first we had Sinn Féin who crashed the executive when it suited them, and now we have the DUP crash the executive when it suits them. But 6 years of a gap of leadership with regards to the health services, I'm increasingly seeing that people are getting frustrated with GPs and health workers, and that's a natural thing because people can't get access to services, but they can't get access to services because politicians in positions won't make the decisions in order to ensure that investment is made on a long-term basis, and that goes right across the board. We've had a succession of health ministers from a range of parties. We've had report after report after report around the whole health service sitting on shelves for years because people won't make decisions, and people are now bearing the brunt of it. So whilst I absolutely agree that we should respond to the consultation, I think it's important that we outline that because ultimately there is very little point in us being able to sit here as councillors and tell what are effectively leaders in the health service that we don't want our services cut when that is a position that they've been put in by the lack of political leadership across the region over the last 6 years and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Councillor Jackson.
Gurmagit, Chair, and I think Councillor Doyle knows all about not being able to take a decision, but we, in relation to the proposal, we're fully supportive. You've alluded yourself, Chair, is that the Southwest Acute Hospital sits outside of our council area, but it is very much part of the health service that's available to many, not only those that are from Castleberg, but there's quite a lot of specialist clinics that are run out of the Southwest Acute Hospital. Our party is fully supportive of doing whatever we can to retain all the services that are available. And I know it was our party, Councillor McCann in Fermanagh Council, who brought forward the motion to hold a special meeting to find out what that particular council could do to retain and retain the services of the vital services of the hospital. So, as a neighbouring council and as a council where our ratepayers rely on and depend on those services, we should equally be doing all that we can to retain those services. So we have no problem supporting the proposal, Chair. Just as a final mark, I just wanted to make a declaration of interest as an employee of the Western Health and Social Care Trust. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. I think, I'm live. Like Councillor Jackson, I'll make a declaration of interest as family members working within the Trust. Thank you for bringing the motion, and you quite rightly highlight the fact that it does impact on quite a large rural swathe of our district council area, but the point has also been made of the impact of the knock-on impact that will affect Galvin with changes that are being thought about. Councillor Jackson has referred there to Fermanagh and Omagh, who have a campaign, and I think it would only be right. I'm not a member of committee, and thank you for the opportunity, but it would be right that committee via council or council via committee, whichever, would contact Omagh, Fermanagh Omagh, extending our full support to their efforts as a council to work with SWA and have proper health provision within the entire southwest area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Councillor Tierney.
Chair, thank you. And just to, I suppose, formally declare that we're more than happy to support your proposal. I think it's clear to see that Panto season is now over and we're in election mode, or election season. It's quite, I suppose, strange to hear Aintu slagging Sinn Féin for crashing the executive when the leader of Aintu was a member of Sinn Féin when they crashed the executive, and obviously supportive of that at that time. But I think the important part is, and I think Councillor Jackson referred to it, there are people not only in the Derrick DA but people across this district who use the SWA, and the removal of any services will have a knock-on impact. We had the trade unions in here a number of weeks ago, and they were able to tell us about the impact that the closing of emergency services at the SWA would have on emergency services here at Altnagelvin, which in my view has a knock-on impact for people right across the northwest, not just within the Derry and Instraman District Council area. We already know that Altnagelvin's ED is under severe pressure at the best of times, and added pressure onto that service is only going to make things a lot worse. So we're more than happy to support your proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Harkin.
Thanks, Chair. And we, as People Before Profit, fully support the proposal coming from Unison, and we send our solidarity to everybody involved in the Save Our Acute Services campaign. And I think people have spoken around this issue about protecting the hospital and its services. And I think the key thing is going to be people continuing to build the massive protests that they've held and the massive meetings. That's going to be the key thing in determining and swaying opinions. And look, this is about the future of the health and social care service, because these are the type of things that are happening to our health service right across the board. We've got the Bengoa report looming in the background, and that is really about what's being called rationalising our health service, but many people see it as a plan, an austerity plan for our health service. So look, it is the case that Stormont has green-lighted far too much of the Tory approach to the health service. Much of it, our health service, has been privatised, and we see this crisis now with vital services potentially being withdrawn from an area and massively impacting, people here and in other council districts. So I think we have to stand in solidarity with this, and this is about the future. This is about saving and defending our health and social care service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Members, no further speakers, so yeah, we're going to respond to the consultation, right to the trust, and extend our support to the Mananoma District Council's campaign to save the SWA. Members, I proposed that, seconded by Councillor McGinley. I've heard nothing but support for it, so I'm going to take it as unanimous, members. Okay, members, going to move to item 7, which is the matters arising from open minutes of Health and Community Committee held on Thursday, the 8th of December and Friday, the 9th of December. If anyone has any matters arising. Yeah, Councillor Harkin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. HC 286/22. And I think we had a very good discussion in here about maintaining GP services at the Chantallo Health Centre. And there was a united response to that. And obviously there was, many people signed a petition. There was a rally. There was a great motion passed by the council. And I think all that is to be welcomed. One thing I wanted to raise today, which is I think it was very concerning. There was a request put into the Chantallo Community Centre to host a community meeting about the maintaining the GP services there. And that request, which was made by residents, was refused. Now, the people who refused it did say they were members of a political party, and so I think we want to get clarification as to whether or not there is a problem with the Shantallow Community Centre hosting a meeting, a public meeting, a campaign meeting about the GP services. The issue here is that we've raised this before about people being excluded from certain buildings that are publicly funded where the council has a role, and this type of gatekeeping is simply unacceptable. People were told that there's a residents committee and that they would have a meeting. That meeting hasn't happened. And a lot of people in the area don't even know, aren't part of the residents committee. And this is much bigger than one residents committee, to be quite honest. So this kind of gatekeeping was very, very disappointing. And it's disappointing because this is a huge issue for people, as of concern of people right across Shantallow, but also right across the city. And we're not going to accept this type of gatekeeping. And there's discussions about other community centres happening right now about their future, and the same thing applies. We can't have a situation where people are told, you're not with us, so you're not getting to hold a public meeting. We had a great public meeting in Brook Park, the Save Radio Foil campaign. Lots of political parties attended that, and lots of people from different trade unions, lots of people from different campaigns. What's the issue here? So I would like to get clarification as to whether or not a meeting can be held and why this meeting was blocked at the Shantallow Community Centre. Thank you.
Through yourself, Chair, I don't know the detail around it, Councillor Harkin, but look, we're happy to investigate it. Just from, in terms of general terms, none of our community centres have shared management agreement with council, and individual political parties aren't allowed to book rooms or function halls. That's the only extent in terms of what you're not allowed to do in those centres, but individual parties. But I need to get the detail around this particular issue before I could give you a response. Councillor Harkin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm very aware that a political party can't hold a political party public meeting, but if there's a request to hold a public meeting about a particular issue, it seems like that does happen on a regular basis. So this was not a party political meeting. This was a meeting that was not going to be party logos. This was about members of the residents of that area requesting that a space be booked to hold a meeting, and that they were told no, that's not happening. They were then told that by the people who refused the request that a residents committee there would host a meeting. And that didn't happen either. So I just don't understand. This doesn't seem to me to be, it seems like this meeting should have been allowed to be booked and organised, and that anybody could have turned up to it from any political party or none. And that's the way many meetings. So I think we need a bit of a clarification about this particular centre and why that meeting was refused, but also the policy in general. Meaning, if I go down to Pilots Row, or somebody goes to Pilots Row and they say they want to have a meeting about Radio Foil, on what basis can that be turned down if it's a campaign meeting? Thank you.
Officers will come back to you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor Tierney, then before you, Councillor Rudd, go ahead, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you, Chair. I'll admit early on, I don't know the full detail of what Councillor Harkin is raising. But I do work very closely with Shantallow Community Residents Association, who are the main tenant, I suppose, in Shantallow Community Centre. And I think it's unfair of anybody to accuse that organisation of gatekeeping, to be quite frank. There is a policy around political parties holding public meetings. From listening to what Councillor Harkin's saying, that's not the case here. I think there must have been some type of mix-up in communication between whoever was trying to book that particular meeting and whoever was on the other end receiving the booking. just for people's information, Shantallow Community Centre, in my opinion, is one of the best run and busiest community centres that we have across this district. Without shadow of a doubt, there's not a day that there isn't ordinary people from right across Shantallow and right across the Ballyarna DA coming in and using that facility. And I am certainly not going to allow anybody in that organisation to be labelled as a gatekeeper for any political party. As I say, I work every day and daily with them. I think there's a mix-up here. I don't think that this needs an investigation. I think it's a quick phone call to find out what happened and correct the situation. And it might have been more helpful if that phone call had have taken place before it was raised here, because it is only now, in my opinion, casting aspersions on that particular organisation, who I know would have no difficulty whatsoever in hosting a public meeting by ordinary residents for any issue that is affecting them. And that's where the difficulty may be, is who, and we have to remember that we're very close, and I said it already, we're very close to election time. It's who was actually potentially claiming to be a resident. Shantallow Community Residents Association, in my view, are top class at what they do in terms of supporting, representing and working for their community. And there should be no call for an investigation. It's a quick phone call to find out what happened, correct the situation, and hopefully allow that meeting to go ahead. Or if it can't go ahead, then allow the community organisation to hold a meeting. There was a rally, as Councillor Harkin has said. Members, employed members at Shantallow Community Residents Association were at that rally. I have spoken to several members of staff who are supportive of the campaign to save the racecourse medical practice. There is I can't see any reason or rationale why they would deliberately try to block this meeting. And I can only suggest that they are following the guidance that they have from council. And I think that's where we need to be looking at. And let's hopefully bring this to a conclusion, because the longer this lingers on, the longer it's going to allow people to mix and use words like gatekeeper and other things like that, and to have a go at potentially a political party. And in the crossfire, what's getting caught up is a very, very good, credible and hard-working community organisation, which we can't allow to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle.
I know Brian mentioned that election coming up there, but I have to say I absolutely endorse absolutely everything he's just said. I work day and daily, as I'm sure other elected reps from Ballyarna do, with Shantallow Community Centre, and I have to say I don't appreciate the fact that it's been raised at this committee. It should have just been a phone call, as Brian said, because as, let's call a spade, as someone who's running elections, you often try and have and raise particular issues. I have previously been told that I can't, for example, book rooms in community centres for party political meetings. That's the policy. I think that's perfectly reasonable. But I don't accept by any means, as someone from a small party who's the only councillor for it in a DEA that has councillors from other parties, I have never felt by any means that Shantallow Community Centre is off limits. For me, the staff do fantastic work, and we've seen that even over the last couple of days with teamwork, so trying to help people in inclement weather. So, you know, I have a suspicion of what has actually gone on here, and I'm not going to say it at this committee meeting, but I'm sure that there are other people who probably have the same idea that I do. But ultimately, you know, coming in here and telling people, you know, using words like gatekeeping, I don't think is fair, especially when representatives of the organisation can't be here to tell us what happened. Now, I do think an investigation is using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, because, you know, there's a policy in place. We all know that. Let the policy be followed, and I don't necessarily see an issue.
Chair, see before you move on. See.
Apologies. Councillor Jackson, go ahead. Apologies.
Chair, no, and I suppose I concur with the previous two remarks. I think it could have been resolved with a phone call, but I don't think the purpose of raising it is to resolve it at all. This is an election stunt, and we've all seen it before. We've seen a community and voluntary sector come under attack by Councillor Harkin before, and I know our community and voluntary sector can see through that, and hopefully they can see that the rest of us stand with them. I think it's from our party's perspective, we've already seen people within this council go on a unicorn hunt against our community and voluntary sector with the same accusations, or with absolutely no outcome on the back of it. We knew at the very start that the accusations and that were placed upon our community and voluntary sector were unfounded, and the investigation, I suppose, has shown that. Now, I think it's absurd that our community and voluntary sector is that any attempts to stop our community centres being politicised is being criticised as political. It's only in the word of Sean Harkin does that make sense. So I fully stand over the policy the council have with our partners in the community and voluntary sector, and I do believe that we all have a responsibility to ensure that our community centres and all council facilities are accessible and available to everyone, and welcoming to everyone and free from political activity. And that's a goal for all of us. I know there's an election campaign and some people are looking for any platform they profile themselves, but leave our community centres out of it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor, I'll let you in for briefly.
Chair, I think it's clear that people want to try and support the community organisation in question here. If it would be agreeable by members, I would like to suggest that we take a 5-minute recess to try and resolve this issue. I will go out and ring the manager of the centre and find out exactly what happened, and that'll put the whole issue to bed. Because the longer this lingers on, and people have talked, and it was probably me that raised it first, people have talked about election campaigns. Let's put the issue to bed right now. Take a 5-minute recess, and I'll ring and find out what happened.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Harkin, officers will be in touch regarding what you've raised and provide clarification on the policy. So you're happy with that, Barry? Okay. Members, any other items for or matters raising?
Chair, there was a proposal on the floor there by Councillor Tierney to take a 5-minute recess. That hasn't been decided on. Maybe you're making that decision yourself as chair to move on.
Okay, Councillor Tierney, you want to get your proposal on to the chat box and get it up on screen?
I have no access to the chat box, but it's very straightforward. We take a 5-minute recess to find out what happened in this particular incident that Councillor Harkin's talking about.
We second it? Yep, Councillor Doyle, okay. Members, taking 5 minutes recess here.
Can we?
Can we suspend the YouTube as well, Sean? Okay, members, strange turn of events, but I'm going to give Councillor Tierney and Councillor Harkin an opportunity to comment here. Councillor Tierney, go ahead, and then I'm going to move on from this item afterwards.
Thank you, Chair. And I, for one, will be glad to move on from this item. And I want to thank you and members for supporting the call for a short recess to try and get to the bottom of this. During that recess, I had a telephone conversation with the manager at Chantal Community Centre to find out what exactly went on. And Councillor Harkin is right, there was a query to have a public meeting around the removal of services at Risk Course Medical Practice. The person that made that inquiry spoke, first of all, to a member of staff and were referred to the manager, and then spoke with the manager. During the conversation, which they were happy to facilitate, the guy that was making the query described himself as a trade unionist, and the management at Chantal Community Centre were happy to see that the trade union were becoming involved and trade unionists were becoming involved in the campaign around that particular centre. There was a comment then made that, you know, the last thing that we want to see is anyone holding a public meeting in a council building and then standing for election at the election in May, the local government election in May. The gentleman who was making the query said, yes, it's very likely that I will be a candidate for People Before Profit in Ballyrnet. And at that point, the management referred to the council policy and could not accept the booking. But they did inform the gentleman that if there was a need for a public meeting, the Chantal Community Residents Association would have no issue in hosting a public meeting themselves where all elected representatives would be invited. Therefore, I think it is extremely unfair, and I think Councillor Harkin should withdraw his remarks around gatekeeping whenever all the manager and the staff at Chantal Community Centre were doing is following a policy that was laid down by this council, which Councillor Harkin is elected to. I think it's extremely unfair, and as I've already said, cast aspersions on an organisation who, in my opinion, a shining example within the community and voluntary sector in this area. And I would point out that whenever I was speaking to the manager of the centre, he was actually in Cornshell Fields distributing grit for the community, which they have been doing over this last number of days. That's the kind of people we're talking about. Let's not be running down the community and voluntary sector. And I'm telling you, I will not stand and allow anyone to run down the community and voluntary sector in my DA, which they clearly have no clue about or what they do for our area. It's unfair, it's unhelpful, it's unwanted, and it should, in my opinion, be withdrawn right now. Thank you.
Councillor Harkin, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate that Brian had a conversation, and I'll put in a call myself to the centre manager tomorrow when I get a chance. And I think we have a very good understanding of how the community and voluntary sector works. I know many people in it myself. And this is not about disparaging the work that people in the Chantal Community Centre may do. But there are issues of gatekeeping, and you're well aware of them. I didn't interrupt you. You're well aware of them yourself because you have raised them as the SDLP. So for me, this is a matter of interpretation. This was about having a public meeting, not a party meeting on a particular issue, and that was turned down. So there doesn't need to be a great investigation into it. I think there needs to be a bit of clarification from council as to what kind of meeting can be held, because my understanding is that you can book to host a public meeting as long as it's not a party political meeting, and that does happen. And it's not just campaign meetings. There's other types of meetings that are booked that political representatives may turn up to. Some people seem to get to do these meetings, and some people seem not to be able to do them. And to say that there isn't some parts of the community and voluntary sector that aren't politicised is just not honest. So you may disagree, but that's our viewpoint on it. So while we appreciate that the centre manager may have a certain interpretation of this, we have a different one, and I'll happily put in a call myself to the centre manager about it.
Can you confirm,
Councillor
Harkin,
Tierney, through
that
the
the
chair,
guy
Councillor
that's
Tierney,
booking is going to
through
be
the
a
chair.
candidate for people before profit?
Councillor Tierney, through the chair. Members, Councillor Harkin, thank you for that. Barry is going to send around members of the committee the shared management agreement guidelines so we all can have a look at them. Members, moving on, any further items, matters arising? Members, any further? Yep, Councillor Doyle, go ahead.
It's HC 31322, Chair. Update on Trojan's FC storage concerns and potential implications of recent DFC guidance. I know the city solicitor had provided a brief on this issue, but in terms of just specifically Trojans, can we maybe get an outline of what communication has been given to them since this was raised? Because I know that obviously we've got the guidance. I'm still a wee bit unclear about it, if I'm honest, given the legalities around it. But has there been any communication to try and alleviate this? Because I know at one stage there was a room that was offered in the centre. But then we got the guidance then about the Causeway Coast and Glens audit. So if we could have an update on that, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Barry is going to give you an update.
Through yourself, Chair, for that specific project, yes, Councillor Doyle, the team up at Bishopsfield have allocated Trojan storage in the old prefab changing. What has been communicated to them is based on this best value guidance and DFC guidance. We will obviously have to go with a lot of these to LPS and get evaluation. The club's aware of that, so there will be a paper coming in within the next couple of months with a list right across our council estate where we have and what guidance we need to get from LPS in terms of those. So we bring those in so the club are aware of that they will have to pay some sort of rental fee determined by LPS.
Have enough, Councillor Doyle?
Thanks, Barry. Any chance, just whenever that guidance comes in from LPS, that we could be updated at the committee, just please?
Through yourself, Chair, yeah, we'll do that for all of those specific cases for all of the clubs, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Members, any further matters raising? Okay, members, going to move on to item 8, which is the co-design process and support refugees and asylum seekers in Derry City and Strabane Council area. And Barry is taking this item.
Thanks, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek your approval for the development of a co-design process to develop an action plan to support the integration needs of refugees and asylum seekers in the council area. Members, just to try and summarise as quickly as you can, council officers have attended recent operational group meetings, and that happens every 2 weeks. With the Home Office, mayors, TO and other councils discuss issues associated with the relocation of asylum seekers and refugees across Northern Ireland. TO has informed officers that the Home Office has funding available for councils to provide support mechanisms which will assist the integration of our new residents within the city and district. The proposal for council, this council area members, is that council procure a competent service provider to carry out a co-design process with all relevant stakeholders to develop a 2-year action plan to support asylum seekers and refugees. And the work will be undertaken in February, March 2023 and will take account of the current and future needs and demands. Delivery of the action plan will then be dependent on funding being committed by the Executive Office into next financial year. So they've allocated a budget of £10,000 to us. We're about to appoint a consultant to carry out this work. No match funding is required from council. So the recommendation, members, is to approve the procurement of a competent provider to carry out a co-design process for the development of this action plan within our city and district. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Barry. Anyone want to speak on this item? Can we get a proposer and seconder? Proposed, Councillor Farrell.
Yeah, I'll speak very briefly on this item. SLP are happy to propose this item. I think it's incumbent upon us as a council to make this area as welcoming as possible for asylum seekers and refugees alike. it's important that we create the conditions where, these people who are fleeing very, very difficult situations integrate into society and make a better life here in Derry and Strabane. So happy to propose the item on behalf of the SDLP.
Thank you. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think as a council, it's incumbent upon us to do everything we can to make Derry and Strabane district as welcoming as possible to asylum seekers and migrants. We're seeing some very dark developments in the south of Ireland right now in regards to protests being organised by right-wing organisations trying to whip people up in communities. Many of these protests are being organised by openly far-right fascist organisations. And I think it's very important that our council is pointing in a different direction and not allowing that kind of poison to spread. We will be bringing a motion about this to the full meeting later this month. But our work around this is very much welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Harkin. Any other speakers? We have Councillor Farr proposing. Do we have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Jackson. Okay, members, I'm going to move on to item 9, which is the Ryan McBride Brandywell Stadium review of facilities, pages 61 to 66 on your packs, and Barry's going to take this item.
Thank you, Chair. Members, bear with me. It's quite a long, detailed report. The purpose of the report is to update you following discussions between Derry City Football Club and council officers regarding the Ryan McBride Brandywell Stadium. The club's chairman and board of directors requested to meet with council officers specifically to discuss facilities at the ground, and senior members of the FAI also attended this meeting on the 1st of December last year. The FAI have advised that based on their assessment, the current playing surface is unlikely to be fit for elite level soccer beyond the 2023 season. Members, just for your own information, the pitch is tested annually and has achieved the necessary accreditation and certification. The FAI have further advised that the European governing body UEFA have established a working group concerning the future of all 3G pitches amidst potential changes in legislation. And you'll see at the bottom of that paragraph, the organisation are carrying out research into alternatives and are considering a 6-year transitional period, at the end of which 3G surfaces with rubber crumb infill are no longer to be used for competitive matches. The club have also requested additional capacity for the forthcoming season for the Electricity League of Ireland Premier League. And I'll come to that later on within the report, members, what the club are proposing. Both the club and FAI requested also an update on phase 2 of the Brandywell redevelopment plans, and members will be aware that DFC's sub-regional stadia has not progressed, and therefore plans to further redevelop the ground have been placed on hold. So in terms of the key issues, members, the 3G pitch was opened in March 18, and a portion of that funding of 929,000 was funded by OFM-DFM under the Social Investment Fund. And the conditions of the funding include a covenant for community use. At present, usage of the pitch includes 22 user groups with varied age ranges, both men and women's competitive football, and range from grassroots to elite level through Derry City and Institute. According to manufacturer's guidelines, the pitch can sustain a maximum of 50 hours usage per week. Weekly usage has, however, been maintained at between 35 and 40 in the interest of protecting the longevity of the pitch, and that is something we have worked with the FAI on. There's a maintenance programme in place for the pitch which follows the manufacturer's guidance, including a weekly brushing schedule, topping up rubber infill, and annual pitch testing and certification in order for Derry City to play in the league, Institute to play in the Irish League, and also for any possible European competitions. There's currently a high demand for access to 3G facilities across all of the council area, with most sites operating an annual open call, then allocating slots to groups based on agreed criteria. The Brandywell pitch is currently in use for over 35 hours per week, where a grass pitch cannot sustain more than 6 hours per week, probably 2 matches, maybe a maximum of 3 during the summer months.
While officers duly note the advice from the FAI and the feedback from the football club regarding the playing surface, the pitch is certified until July 23 by FIFA. Pitch certification requires a facility to meet the testing criteria of the FIFA Quality Control Programme. Continued research and development will remain part of the FIFA Quality Programme. However, at present, there are no published scientific findings regarding the use of microplastics generating infill and their risk. The club members have also requested permission to erect a permanent structure at the Brandywell Road end of the ground, where additional standing spectators can be accommodated in a covered terrace. The club have already began scoping out this proposal and appointed a firm of consulting engineers. They have yet to outline what capacity the standing area would be. In terms of the implications in Section 4, members are a range of stakeholders playing and training on the Brandywell, not just Derry City. In addition to Derry City's main senior team, these groups include Ballymoor Football Club at all levels, Derry City Women, Foyle Bales, the D&D Youth, Derry City Youth, Trojans AFC, Institute Football Club at all levels, and playing at the various NIFL Championship and underage competitions. There are currently no 3G pitches available as an alternative for these clubs within the council area to train or play their games on. There are only 4 pitches in the council area suitable for intermediate football. These include Oakland Park, Melvin Arena, the Swilly at Templemore Sports Complex, and the Ryan McBride Brandywell pitch. Restricting the amount of play at Brandywell by converting to grass would reduce options for all of those clubs that play at intermediate level at a competitive level. Council have other playing pitches with the same services and indeed are designing further at the minute, and the learn from this process will inform other such projects, members. So in terms of the financial implications, the 3G pitch, as I've highlighted, was funded by the Social Investment Fund, and you'll see in Section 4.4, Section 9 of the letter of offer outlines the economic life of the asset as 10 years from the date of the letter to proceed to fix assets, and further states that the project promoter, i.e. council, shall not during the economic life of the asset dispose of any interest in any such assets wholly or partly purchased or constructed with any part of the grant other than the interest, the disposal of which is permitted or contemplated under the provisions of the letter of offer, unless they shall have obtained the prior written approval of the department. Written permission from the Office of the First and Deputy First Minister will be required before any physical change to the pitch surface would be agreed. Also, members, since we've introduced this surface, council are bringing in around 80,000 per annum compared to the previous income from the former grass pitch at approximately 11,000 per year. That was pre-2018. Income was based on facility hire for both training and matches. Moving from a 3G facility to a grass pitch would result in no training income and reduced match income. And replacing the 3G pitch with a hybrid surface would offer less playing time. However, this surface could potentially sustain 2 to 3 times more than natural grass. You'll see, members, there also in Section 4.6 implications around replacing the current surface. If you were to go like grass, semi-synthetic, and the implications that users would be out for a period of 6 to 12 months while that was being established. Also, at the bottom of Section 4.6, before definitive advice on the matter could be given to members, we need to undertake an options appraisal. Officers would require the services of a specialist sports service expert experienced in designing all forms of playing services, including natural grass and hybrids, along with a cost consultant with suitable experience in pricing all the playing surface types covered by the appraisal. It is envisaged that the fee to develop a costed options appraisal for the Brandywell pitch might be in the order of 5,000 to 7,000, excluding VAT. There is currently no capital budget, members, for replacement pitch at the stadium, and rates investment would therefore be required to fund any capital costs unless an alternative external funding source can be identified. Rates investment would also be required to fund the significant reduction in revenue identified in Section 4.4. The cost to change the pitch surface remains unclear and is highly dependent on which option is chosen. However, a replacement of the 3G surface with a traditional sand mattress construction is likely to be around 60,000 to 800,000 and yield limited income. A like-for-like replacement 3G surface would likely to exceed £1 million, and further investigation would be required in terms of the governing body and legislative implications concerning the future of rubber infill. The third option includes a semi-synthetic or hybrid surface similar to the Aviva Stadium or Windsor Park. However, there is reportedly a limited lifespan to these surfaces, requiring replacement approximately every 4 years, and their construction costs will be significantly higher than that for a conventional grass pitch. While any pitch works will be considered permitted development, the proposed covering stand area that the club are proposing at the Brandywell Road would require planning permission, building control and input from Council's capital development team. Design and layout would need to comply with the Sports Ground Safety Authority Green Guide, while suitable measures will need to be made for the safe access and egress of spectators. This facility would then be subject to periodic inspection. While DCFC have indicated a willingness to cover the cost for the design and construction of a covered standing area behind the north goal, upon completion the new stand would return to council ownership. Therefore, any running or maintenance costs would be the responsibility of council. The club would be required to renew their licence with the council to reflect the new structure. Any liability for accidents or injuries would be the responsibility of the club. This would also be reflected within a licence agreement. The club would be obliged to meet with the Safety Advisory Group prior to any changes to the stadium capacity. So members, in terms of recommendations, that members note the issues raised by both Derry City Football Club and the FAI. That members approve the formation of a multidisciplinary team of officers to further investigate the club's 3 requests, i.e. pitch surface replacement, creation of additional standing area behind the Brandywell Road goal, and development of a funding strategy for completing the extension to Mark Farn Stand and other capital improvement works to the rest of the grounds, and that a budget of £7,000 be approved for developing a costed options appraisal report for the replacement of the existing Brandywell playing surface. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, first speaker, Councillor Tierney.
Chair, thank you, and thanks to Barry for the report. A very detailed report, but I think that's particularly whenever you're looking at the 3 separate issues outlined within the recommendations, you know, a detailed report was required. And looking at the recommendations, 5.1, members note the issues raised by Derry City Football Club and the Football Association of Ireland. In terms of the health and safety of the players, not only Derry City Football Club, but all of the other user groups named in the report. I think it's only but right that we note the concerns that are there. I think it's Germany have banned already the wee black pellets that are on the Brandywell because of health and safety concerns, and it's again detailed in the report that UEFA are currently have a working group set up and are currently looking at it, but one would be led to believe that it's going down that route where these are no longer acceptable at that standard of football. So I think we have to do something around the pitch. Looking at 5.2, that we approve a multidisciplinary team around the request for the replacement pitch and the additional stand at the Brandywell. I think that's something that we should be welcoming. Anybody who follows Derry City or has been watching recently, you know, numbers at the ground are exceeding expectations, and you know, I go to the Brandywell. It's quite competitive trying to get a ticket now for a home game at the tail end of last season, and I have no doubt that will continue. Success on the pitch obviously attracts further spectators, and there's definitely an appetite, particularly from young people across this district and further afield to follow Derry City. So anything we can do to enhance the number of people that we can get into the ground in a safe manner, we should be absolutely doing it. Also, given the fact that the club are in many ways looking to work in partnership, but also in many ways in terms of the financial commitment leading on this, I think that's something that we should welcome as well. I think it was 2017, Chair, that I proposed that Council prepare a bid for phase 2 of the Brandywell to the sub-regional stadia fund. 2017, it was 33 million, was ring-fenced within the DFC budget for that fund. That 33 million then is not worth 33 million now in terms of inflation and the cost of materials and one thing and another going up. And we've been told time and time again through meetings of this committee, through deputations to the committee by the sub-regional stadia people at DFC, we've been told by the former Minister for Communities just before the DUP pulled down the executive that any sign-off on this scheme requires executive sign-off. Therefore, there's no sign of this scheme opening in the near distant future. So I think, and everyone who supports Derry City or who attends the Brandywell, the expectation always was that the Mark Farn stand would be the length of the pitch. And there was always an expectation that phase 2 works would begin as soon as and if that scheme ever opened. So we now have to accept that, we've waited long enough. Let's put a plan in place with the club, with the user groups to see how we can complete that stand. I think that's included, well, it is included in 5.2 of the report. I think it's something now that we have to be looking at. If the scheme opens between now and any funding package becoming available, great. If it doesn't, then we plough ahead and finish that work at the Brandywell. And, number 3 around a budget, everything, whether we like it or not, requires a budget to try and get this thing up and running and get these works done. But the Brandywell has been a long, long saga in this council and in the former Derry City Council, long before my time on council. And I think it's now time that we accept that, we've got stuff, we've got work to do. The current pitch isn't suitable. Let's do something about it. I would just like to ask Barry in relation to the surface, the current surface that's there, if that was to be changed back to a grass pitch or to a hybrid type pitch. And obviously we know that pitches of that standard are limited within this council district. Can you relocate that pitch to somewhere else? For example, I know the grass pitch in what would have been formerly known as the showgrounds, which is in the middle of the dog track. The bookings for that wouldn't be as high as some of our other pitches. Could we potentially relocate the AstroTurf that's in the Brandywell to that pitch, which would then allow us to continue with a similar pitch in basically the same area, and would support the other user groups that are named within the report? Is that something we can do? In relation to disposal of the pitch, if that's the route we go down, or even removal of the pitch, there's a part in the report which refers to the Office of First and Deputy First Minister and sign off from that office. Obviously, once again, well, it's changed. It had changed to the Executive Office, but it's still the same body. Again, there's no First and Deputy First Minister. Can a Permanent Secretary sign that off, or the Head of Civil Service? Have we looked at that to see how what the chances are of getting sign off to remove this pitch? Because it's very unfortunate, but where it's at the minute, it's become surplus to requirements, and we don't. It's not something that we can allow to continue. So I would like to propose all 3 recommendations in the hope that this leads to something further at the Brandywell for Derry City Football Club and all the other user groups. But I just wouldn't like to see that surface that's there now just being put on a skip somewhere. It was, I think at the time it was 900 grand for the playing surface or something around that. The only support at the time that we got from central government for the refurbishment of the Brandywell. But I would like to see if that's a possibility, if that can be relocated to anywhere. But I'm only suggesting that pitch because it's in a similar area, would meet the needs of that particular community whenever you talk about the community aspect of that letter of offer that was issued. But in relation to the paper, I'm happy to propose the recommendations, and I look forward hopefully to working with officers, all the user groups and the club to see if we can make more improvements at the Brandywell. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yep, Barry, you want to respond to the questions?
Yeah, hopefully I'll answer all your questions, Councillor Tierney. The first one, I'll do them in reverse. With regards to, we haven't had any engagement with the Executive Office, but just for members' information, you would have to get approval from the Executive Office, but within the letter of offer, there's a clawback. So if we were to lift that pitch, within the 10-year period, there's a high likelihood that they would claw back that 900 and whatever £1,000. Plus, there'll be an interest charge in that as well. So that would be an additional cost if you were lifting that within that 10-year period. In terms of the existing facility, could you lift the 3G? No, that's something we've looked at technically. Once you start splitting the carpet, you never get that put down again. But also, you have to appreciate there's drainage. There's a full drainage system under there. There's a shock pad. So if we were going to replace at another site, it would be a brand new capital project. It would have to be designed, engineered, proper drainage, proper shock pad. So it's essentially a new 1.2 or whatever the cost for the latest, building a soccer 3G. In terms of where we're at from a safety point of view, the report highlights this is something that has been brought up by the football club and also the FAI, that they would aspire to return competitive League of Ireland football to grass. We, as a council, do not have any reports from a health and safety that pitch is dangerous. So in terms of having to lift that for the rest of our users, that's not something was on our agenda. We have, as members will be aware, we have 3G facilities right across the city and district. So, and we're building new ones, including at the Daisy Field. So that is not something that was on our radar. This is a request from the football club. They would wish to, and the FAI, return to playing on grass for the competitive games. And you're right, that would mean a displacement of 25 to 30 hours of other groups. So, and we don't have any facilities available. So there would be a huge displacement issue from all those clubs, leagues, men, female, that currently play at the Brandywell. So I hope I've answered all three of your questions.
Brian, go ahead.
Thanks for that. Barry, see, in relation to the displacement, which is why I suggested that it's on the middle of the dog track, but would there be opportunity at the new pitches at the Daisy Field?
Yourself, Chair, we have already, as part of the business case, we are, as members will be aware, we have already, through our pitches strategy, a huge undersupply in pitches, particularly for training. And I think we brought a report a number of months ago. The rise in female sport has further exacerbated that. So there's probably a greater demand now for our facilities, and we've as I say, for the Daisy Field, we have a business plan in place for that 7-a-side. That's a 7-a-side 3G. At the Daisy Field, and it's a grass pitch that'll take competitive fixtures. Now we are looking at a gravel-based solution, so we might get 4 match plays in a week at the Daisy Field as opposed to 2. But again, it's grass, and the rest is 7-a-side. And we have a huge demand for the Brandywell. Members will probably be well aware that they will be contacted regularly. People can't get into the Brandywell for bookings, so a lot of those displaced users that can't get in there now will go to the Daisy Field. But so we would have an issue if that 3G was taken out of operation. There would be a huge gap and no proposed facilities where those clubs and teams could actually go to.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Barry, for the report. Only too happy to second this. I think what's significant about this is that this is an initiative largely of the club coming to us. They work in partnership as they've always done, but I think the leadership that's been playing out here in relation to these issues is very much welcome. One of the things, I suppose, off the back of what Brian said is in terms of a costed options appraisal report coming forward, that we take into consideration the impact that any works might have. I'm more than happy with the recommendations. What I would say is, and again, Brian referred to it, whilst I think it's prudent at this stage, given that I don't think it's appropriate for the council, but the fans also to have waited so long for phase 2 to be completed. I think it's very important that we do what we can, but we shouldn't also be letting the relevant department off the hook. Granted, there's nothing that anybody in the department can do at this stage without, as we're told, executive approval. But I do think that should that situation change, that we definitely need to dovetail that, because it shouldn't necessarily be left to councils, no matter how advanced the plans might be at that stage. And I know that's a point that's been made previously. So more than happy to second and welcome the report. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Councillor Jackson.
I just forgot about my chair. For full for full disclosure, I want to say that and declare that I have met with representatives from Derry City Football Club, met representatives prior to the meeting with council in late November, and at that stage there was very detailed plans around increasing capacity at the stand. I was given figures and seen the detailed plans, and there was a commitment in terms of financial contribution to deliver this. They just needed council support and permission. I'm going to say at this stage, from that element of it, it's really, really frustrating that we're sitting here at the meeting in November, sitting here now at the middle of January, this, I'm assuming these recommendations need to be ratified at full council, so we'll be into February before the formation of this multidisciplinary team of officers. They work with an anchor tenant of one of our facilities. I suppose the last year, we as a council have endorsed our support, rightfully so, of the successes on the pitch from Derry City Football Club. And I suppose you would have hoped that there would have been a mechanism for officers to work along with the club. To bring this to fruition a lot sooner, or explore the potential of bringing this to fruition a lot sooner. It's not very often that you have a tenant that's coming along and offering to carry out these works on behalf of council free of charge. That's in the light of the financial pressures the council are under. From our perspective, it's only we can only highlight our frustrations that we haven't seen this progressed. I know from our discussions in November, the club had actually hoped that the work would be underway at this stage, where supporters who are in dire, as Councillor Tierney highlighted, that there's huge demand for tickets. That the club could have been in a position where they could give an indication for all those on a waiting list that there's potential for tickets in a new stand. So whilst we've no problem supporting the recommendations, I suppose it's only right that we highlight our frustrations that the processes of council have prohibited work to progress on this up until now, and we would hope that multidisciplinary team sort of work with a sense of urgency to try and see how that element of this could be progressed. I know there's a lot of attention to the playing surface at the Ryan McBride Stadium at the minute, and that featured heavily in the discussions that we had with the club. Not only have we've heard of the increase in reported injuries to players. One of the factors that we have to take into consideration is, given the on-field success from the club, and there's a huge desire to move on to the next level and attract players that will help the club move to the next level and compete in Europe. It has been highlighted that the playing surface can put players off, and that's a reality. Whether or not there's any fact behind that in terms of footballers at that level, they can be off-put by the surface of the home ground. So that is a real consideration. But Barry, you've outlined the the huge demand for 3G pitches, and I know that was a huge factor in the redevelopment of the Brandywell at the time, and I know some people criticised the redevelopment of the Brandywell as a Sinn Féin pet project. I can proudly say that the redevelopment and any investment under the Ryan McBride Brandywell Stadium is a priority for us, and it will always be a priority. It will be a priority for us, and we make no apologies for prioritising the redevelopment of the Brandywell as part of the SIF projects. But an element of that was the huge need at a community level for 3G pitches, and we acknowledged that there is development at the Daisy Field. And it's for this reason that we completely opposed any removal of the soccer element of the Daisy Field development. And thankfully, now we've seen progress on that, and we've seen provision for soccer clubs, local soccer clubs protected, and hopefully we'll see progress in that. But I think in terms of any moves to move to a grass pitch, I think that consultation with all the stakeholders needs to be key, and we're looking at it in line with the development elsewhere, whether it's at the Daisy Field or in other parts of the city. Now, I know Barry, I'm getting quite a lot of calls at the minute from sporting clubs. I suppose it coincides with the opening of the Waterside Shared Village, and there's huge competition for places and spots within the 3G facilities there. And one of the things that has been highlighted to me is there seems to be a bit of frustration and maybe lack of communication around the restrictions around the use of 3G pitch, because the clubs see that the pitch isn't being used, particularly at the Brandywell, and whilst at a time when there's huge demand, when clubs are travelling to Strabane or to Greysteel to use other facilities, they can't understand why there's a facility, a perfectly good facility that's sitting at the Ryan McBride Stadium that isn't being utilised, and that's explained within the report around the restrictions around usage of that particular surface. But I would like to see a report come back detailing the current usage of all our 3G pitches, and just in terms of, is there any gaps in provision, or is there any opportunities for bookings within our current provision? Because there's a great deal of frustration right across in the sporting fraternity in our city around access to 3G, and I think that report would be helpful in terms of clearing up what the actual provision is. But in relation to the recommendations, I have no problem on behalf of Sinn Féin supporting them, but we would highlight that there does need to be wider consultation with all stakeholders in relation to the replacement of the surface. But I would be keen to see progress on the stadium and the additional stand as soon as possible, because the time's sort of ticking. I've already expressed our frustration that it's taken so long to get to this stage. We've almost missed 2 months, so I would hope to see progression within the next 2 months. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll answer in reverse again, Councillor Jackson. And certainly we'll bring a paper back in terms of 3G bookings, but I can tell you now we don't have any. So we have there's a huge demand and we can't cater for every team. And I think we had highlighted through the sports development team the growth of female sport, field sport in particular, has has been great, but it has put a further demand on our pitches from when we did the pitches strategy. So we'll bring a report back, but we don't have any free slots. The odd one that might be cancelled. In terms of this overall paper, you're right. Yeah, look, there will be certain hours where you would think that the Brandywell would be available for usage, but in order to maintain the UEFA Pro cert, we're limited to a certain number of hours per week and to get the certification. So that is to facilitate Derry City playing in Europe. And if we didn't do that, then they may not meet their European certification requirements. So that's the reason for that, and probably groups that see it free probably don't understand that. With regards to the timescales with this particular piece of work, the club didn't meet with council officers until December, so this was the earliest opportunity to get a report into committee. For obviously officers can't make a decision to put a stand or lift up a pitch, in terms of a major facility. But just for members' information, this project is being entirely led by the football club. We have put a team together to assist them because obviously we own the site. But as of this week, the football club haven't appointed a design team as yet. So I don't know, they have a project management team in place. But so in terms of their expectation of building a stand, getting it up for this season, we have to go through planning, we have to go through building control, we'll have to go through community consultation, there'll have to be a design. A design process normally lasts, period of 4 months at best, sometimes 6 months, then an appointment of a contractor. So, it's completely unrealistic that there was going to be a stand built on our grounds for this season. So look, it's up to the club now. The club were appointed a design team, and our own capital team have been engaging with them as of this week, the project management team. So they're hoping to see movement on that and get a design team, and that'll then kickstart the project. But look, whenever we have further clarity around that, we'll certainly bring information into members around timescales and all of that. But that's as much information as I have at the minute through our own capital team.
Thank you, Barry. Mr. Jackson, you happy with that? Yep. Councillor McGinley?
Good Chair, and I'll be relatively brief as Christopher has sort of laid out our party's position that we're in support of the recommendations. However, I just wanted to flag up one point, and it's in point 4.8, where there is no capital budget for the replacement pitch, and the automatic response to that is that a RITS investment would therefore be required. I wonder, are the officers aware of the Irish FA and the Department for Culture, Media and Sports Multi-Sport Grassroots Facilities Investment Fund? We got an email about it yesterday. It's open now for expression of interests. It's geared towards capital projects, primarily focused on the installation and improvement of natural grass or certified artificial grass pitches. So it's something that needs to be considered, but I think that in terms of all these types of projects moving forward, we need to be thinking outside the box rather than just assuming that it's a RITS investment that's going to be how it's funded. But it's just to flag up that that funding opportunity as the expression interest as due to close on the 3rd of February for Mega.
Thank you, Councillor McGinley. Officers tell me they're aware of that, so thanks for raising it. Alderman Hussey?
Thank you, Chair, and I will be brief. Thank you for the opportunity, and as a member of committee. Firstly, of course, congratulations to the club on bringing this forward and being prepared to work in partnership with the council. I trust that given the wider usage of the overall facility, that there'll be engagement across the board throughout that. Couple of questions. In the report, Barry, you state 4 intermediate pitches in the district council area. I presume by that you mean 4 council intermediate pitches, because there are, of course, other intermediate pitches outside of council control in the district area. Concentrating then on the surface itself, and I suppose it's a clear interest as a club who do play there when we're playing Institute, and it's welcome that the health and well-being of players is being considered because of the situation as to whether it is the proper surface for competitive matches to be played on, and there may be legislative from within the football authorities, from within FIFA, legislation as to future use of that type of pitch. So the question is, are there implications for other plans that council have with regard to 3G provision? And particularly, and I have asked this question before within our Derek Active group with regard to the Levelling Up Fund and the proposal for 3G facility there. And I'm sure there are other thoughts of 3G within council provision throughout the area. So are there knock-on provision or knock-on considerations that we need to take on board at this time that we don't end up providing a facility which legislatively becomes unplayable in the future? Thank you.
Through yourself, Chair, you'll see in section 4.3, Alderman Hussey, you've highlighted the point we've made ourselves. Council of other playing pitches with the same surfaces and indeed are designing further development and learning from this process will inform other projects. So as I highlighted to other members, this is something that originated from Derry City having a conversation with council officers around their request to replace grass and then the UEFA standards and FIFA standards and all of that. So look, at present, we are still getting the certification of the pitches. It's something that we monitor, but we don't have any evidence or concerns as yet. But it's something we keep under constant review as part of all our capital development projects. So if something does come out in the future that does prohibit that, then that is something will have an impact right across all our existing and newly planned facilities across the district. But as I've highlighted, officers have nothing and no evidence and information at present to suggest that is dangerous. This has been mainly highlighted by the club who prefer to play in grass for competitive reasons rather than a health and safety issue.
Thank you, Barry. Alderman, are you happy?
Yeah, just query as to the number of intermediate pitches and facilities.
For yourself, Chair, yeah, council have 4 facilities that are designated for intermediate football.
Thank you, Chair. That clarifies the point. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Next speaker, Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Chair. Look, Derry City, as we know, are one of the top teams on the island of Ireland, and they have ambitions to be the #1 team on the island of Ireland, and that means we need a stadium and a pitch that reflects that ambition, especially if the team are going to be playing in Europe year in, year out. So, we support the recommendations included in the report here, and look, the stand, as we all know, I think we've been treated dismally by Stormont in terms of the, development of the stand. So that, seeing the stand develop and the capacity of the stadium develop would be very welcome. I think on the pitch, look, it's clear that the club want a grass pitch. Maybe a hybrid pitch might work. I know that there's a lot of technology now looking at what the best surfaces are, but I do think we have to take the health and safety concerns very, very seriously. And if there's growing numbers of people being injured, that's important. Obviously, 3G pitches have allowed for lots of training, lots of participation by amateur teams as well, intermediate teams. So I think in progressing this, because I do think we want to work with the club and make sure that we create a top-class facility for the players that's attractive to other players coming in. I think we have to make sure as well that we're working along with user groups to make sure that we're not in a situation where we're reducing access to pitches. And as Officer O'Hagan mentioned, there's been a real growth in women's sports as well, and soccer and football is at the top of that. So these are things that we have to work through. But there was mention of funding as well. I think that is obviously to be welcomed, and given the financial situation of the council. But I also think we should be looking in all directions. FAI, the Irish government, obviously storming, but that's not in great shape right now, or in any shape at all. But that we don't want to lose funding as a council, and I think we have to be, looking at all these things while working with the club and trying to make sure that their ambition is fully met. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Alderman Devaney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And look, I have no problem with a club being ambitious moving forward and stuff like that there. But, let's go back to the Brandywell Stadium when that surface was installed. That was the state of the art. And I do know there was a lot of work went on behind the scenes for that project to happen. It has happened. Disappointed to hear now that, look, I know there's a lifespan of 10 years, but that's going to be cut a lot shorter. But look, I take on board Barry's comments in around, people are talking about health and safety and players not coming because of a surface and stuff like that there. But I think Barry is very, very clear. And I think the message has to go out very, very clear. There are no health and safety issues or the pitch surface isn't dangerous, because that's what media will pick up very, very clearly for tomorrow or the weekend's news. We have to get the message out there from our officer team that the pitch is safe. And around, I do take on board Barry's concerns and around the funding coming from OFM, DFM at the time, or whatever it was, and around that. I do worry about the clawback, on what that clawback might be. I think Barry said, could it be the whole 900,000 that was invested in it? I would like clarification on that. And we talk about restrictions on a 3G pitch. Even you move to a grass pitch, there are restrictions on it, and especially I know those teams in the smaller leagues that play on grass pitches. There are many times that matches have to be cancelled during bad weather or snow or inclement weather. Look, I do have concerns in around 4.8. Yes, there will be an ask of council somewhere for funding, and I think everyone in this room that is having meetings and around the rates process at the minute. And look, it is concerning at the moment, trying to get rates set. And this will probably be another ask and around the rates process, maybe not this year, but further down the line. And look, and around the stadium, if the football club are prepared to move in that, I have no problem. But just concerns and around that rates process, because some of us might think that we have a money tree in the back garden and it grows money every week, and we don't have it. And if somebody could tell me where there is one, I would like to find out where it is. But Chair, look, happy to support the recommendation here to move it on to the next level, but I do have concerns on around the cost, and disappointed that this surface now isn't allowed to be there for its full tenure that was expected when it was laid down. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. There will be informed officers, there will be further reports brought to committee, so they'll hopefully clarify your questions there, if that's okay.
Yep, 100%.
Thank you, Alderman Devaney. Councillor Farr.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Barry, for the report. And Councillor Tierney has already outlined our support for the recommendation, but I've got a question about how we fund, phase 2 of the Brandywell and, the ultimate vision for that much-needed sports facility in this city. Brian has already outlined about, our aspirations to apply for sub-regional stadia funds, and we've been waiting for years. And I did a bit of research, and it was first mooted in 2011, and 12 years later it hasn't opened, and not one club across the north has got a penny in support. And I'm going to mention levelling up, and I know there was widespread disappointment across the city and district when our bid for this round was ultimately unsuccessful. But do we have any understanding of future rounds of levelling up? Will there be any opportunity to submit a bid for the Brandywell? Because in my opinion, I have no confidence at all that the sub-regional stadia fund will ever open.
Chair members, just in terms of levelling up, obviously the funding applications sit within the strategic finance section of council. I understand in the letters that we received there is a suggestion that there will be a further round of levelling up funding. The timing and scale of that we don't know. So there will be a follow-up discussion with regard to the outcome of the applications, but also the future opportunities at this stage. In terms of the sub-regional state aid programme, we believe that there are officials within departments looking at that potential, but obviously it does need an executive consideration before funding could be allocated. So I suppose our approach, as with other projects, is to try and be ready for those calls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Thank you, members. No further speaker. The item has been proposed by Councillor Tierney, seconded by Councillor Doyle. I've heard unanimous support for it, so we'll take it as passed, members. Members, moving on to item 10, which is the progress report, Health and Community Directorate Service Delivery Plan 22-23, pages 67 to 100 in your pack. And Karen's taking this item.
And members, it's not my intention to go through the full detail of the report or the appendice, as I'm sure you would hope. It is, I suppose, setting out in line with the Council's corporate requirements, our 6 monthly performance appraisal to you. You've obviously considered a GSP earlier this month, the Strategic Support Units Plan. So we're following along with a similar process. I suppose the only thing to highlight to you, members, is the redefinition of priority actions within the Strategic Inclusive Growth Plan. And obviously they have refocused some of the work that we will be doing. Obviously there is a progress bar in terms of our achievements at this point being 64% complete at the 6 monthly point. A significant number of our projects are ongoing that they don't complete within 6 months. They are right across the financial year. So members, we're just asking you to note the report and happy to take any comments or issues that you may have.
Councillor Doyle, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Karen. Only one, just because it stood out. The progress around increasing use of online booking facilities through the Leisure app. I know there's a comment there about some activities now not being able to book online. For example, a gym. In terms of, does that mean, for example, that this will not be completed at all, or what are we doing to try and remedy that? Thanks.
Have the online app, it's working, yeah.
Maybe I should have been clear, Chair, just in terms of the progress bar is still at 0. So it's just saying that the status update bookings have decreased online in comparison to the same period for 21-22. This is due to some activities now not available to book online. So are we keeping that item in terms of, if we've changed the availability of booking things, maybe we should be trying to take that out rather than having it at 0.
Yeah, through yourself, Chair, that's a year-end output. It's the system there, so you'll get the proper update at the year-end with regards to that. Yep.
Thank you, members. No further speakers. Get a proposer and seconder for item 10. Propose Councillor Farr, seconder. Councillor Doyle. Anyone else want to come in, or no? We'll pick item 10 as passed, members. Members, items 11 to 20 are open for information. If you want to come in on any item, please let me know, either in the chamber or on the chat box. Councillor Doyle, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the age-friendly programme funding pilot, for a start, I welcome it. I think it's great, and the organisations that are carrying out some of the plans right across the local growth partnership areas is great. But to be honest, I was a wee bit underwhelmed in terms of the amount of finance that's actually available. I know that we work in partnership and with the PHA on this, but is it possible for us to, I suppose one of the questions is in the directorate report, it refers to, I think £52,000 is a budget that covers staff and a small programme budget. Here, I think it mentions 45, and that just might be the 8 that we're talking about for these programmes. But I suppose what's the next step? Because £7,700 is great, But in terms of the, because it's a funding pilot, do we know if there's going to be recurring funding available for that? And if we've had any discussions about trying to increase that? Because I do think that older people in particular right across the city and district get a bit of a raw deal when it comes to some of this programme funding. Thanks.
Through yourself, Chair. That's been the same amount every year, and again, we don't have that assurity, Councillor Doyle, of it, because just in terms of funding, it's year for year. This was actually a 2-year programme, so look, we won't have that, and it'll continue on a yearly basis. So it'll, in terms of that assurity, we'll not know to the following year again.
Yep, Councillor Doyle, go ahead.
I appreciate that, Barry. Is there any way that we can get a report then back at some stage as to what other pots of funding might be out there to complement these types of programmes? Because I'm keen that it's relatively small, but I think the impact for a lot of the users is significant. Thank you.
Officer's happy to bring that. Councillor Doyle. Okay, Councillor McGinley, item 18.
Mega Chair, and it's just I was delighted to see this report come under the pack for today's meeting. The update on the Civic Forum for Homeless Heroes Awards 2022. I want to congratulate the Mayor for taking forward this initiative. I think we're all, and it's important that at times we call out statutory agencies when we feel that they're not doing something they should be doing or holding people to account for those types of jobs. But I also think it's really important that we recognise the good work that people are doing. And at the request of the Mayor, Senator Duffy, the Housing Executive took the decision to showcase the excellent work that's done by individuals and organisations in tackling homelessness. And those that are listed within the report deserve all the congratulations that they've had bestowed on them as a result of the Homeless Heroes Awards, because they work hard and the work they do doesn't go unrecognised. So I just wanted to flag that up. I was delighted to see it, and as I say, well done to the Mayor for bringing that initiative forward through the Civic Forum.
Thank you. Councillor McGinley, I would echo that as well. Well done to you, all those winners. Members, no further requests to speak on the items for information. Nope. Proposer and seconder for confidential. Proposed, Councillor Doyle, second, Councillor Farrell. Okay, we'll give it a few minutes to get into confidential.